Hey, what's going on? Today I'm going to be going over a review of some of the good things, bad things, and just some of the annoying things about a 2024 Toy Tacoma that I purchased. It's the TRD off road, and at the time when I bought it, I was looking to get heated seats in it, and the only packages around that had that were the off road upgrade package. So it's not the premium, but it does have the upgraded climate control, and there seems to be an issue with that. I'll explain that more here in a little bit. It's got the upgraded climate control and the heated seats and the dual 8-way power seats. But anyway, I just wanted to get started here, and we'll start with this vent whistle. So this seems to only be on the Tacomas with the upgraded package that have it's the upgraded climate control package with the 8-way power seats and the heated seats and heated steering wheel. Hindsight being what it is, I wish I had just bought a lower end model and had them put the $500 heated seats in it. But here we are. So I will let this play. As you can see here, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to back that up just a hair. What's going on here is it's only whistling when you put it on head or you put it on defrost, and it only does it on it does it on all the temperature settings above low. So from 61 degrees all the way to the max, it does this whistling thing on just the head vents and just the defrost. If you put it with the feet, it doesn't do it. Don't know why. Doesn't really make a lot of sense other than basically what I think it is. I think they've got a flapper in there that's got some air actually pushing past it. It's one of the doors that controls, hey, how much climate's coming through, all that kind of thing. But again, you can put it all the way on low, and for whatever reason, it'll stop whistling for the most part. So anyway, I'll let this play again. And here you can hear it on the defrost. It's on defrost only. I'll put it to the feet in just a second, and you'll hear that noise go away. So. Now this is a cold start, and man, this truck sounds rough. Sounds rough, and it sounds a lot worse than some of the other ones that I heard. Some of the other ones are making this noise. I will explain what the noise is here in just a little bit as I let some of these clips play, because it took me a little bit to kind of hunt it down. But this is the vehicle at cold start. And as you can see here, I kind of identified it as most of the noise is coming from the fuel rail itself. So from the fuel system, the fuel rail. So when I spoke to the Toyota mechanic about this, and they tried to tell me that this is just normal. This is the way all these direct injection engines sound. Um, I'm gonna be honest with you. I went and drove a Ford Ranger and a GMC Canyon. Neither of them make this noise. I've owned quite a few vehicles, had quite a few work vehicles. Of those work trucks, most of them were either F-150s or Chevy Silverado 1500s. There was a couple 2500s in there. I've had a couple diesels as well. As far as a gas engine direct injected, none of the ones I've ever owned have made these noises. None of them. Not the work trucks, none of them. And so for them to sit there and tell you that all these brands do it, like, man, I'm gonna be honest, they're full of it. I can drive down to the dealership today. I can go to Ford right now today and get in any one of their vehicles. I can go to GM the same way. We've got two dealerships here in town. We've also got a Jeep and Ram dealership in town. I can go get in any of their vehicles, and none of them sound like this. And so for them to sit there and tell you, hey, this is just the way it is, it's the way they sound, like, that's a load of crap. And that's putting it nicely. But these guys are full of it, and quite frankly, that they told me that they could fix it, but they don't know when they'd be able to get a fuel pump in, because there's just not parts on the ground for these right now, for these Tacomas. And they said when they did get it put in, they couldn't guarantee that the noise would go away. And I'll talk more about this here in a minute, but I'm gonna let this play. One thing you might notice, there's no insulation or anything covering this fuel rail. They don't have I've heard some people say, oh, they don't have an engine cover on it, and that's what's causing the noise. But I actually took it off I had a F-150, a 2016 F-150 with a 3.5 EcoBoost that's direct and port injection. And I took the cover off, never heard any of these kind of noises. So just kind of sounds a little lame to me, but okay, I'm going to stop this right here for a second. So one thing with these trucks is, for whatever reason, the preventative collision system that it's got on it, when you're sitting in a drive-through, like, see if I can get it to stop, like this, that thing is going off the whole time. You can go in there. I actually had to go in and just shut it off to get the noise to stop, because it'll pop up on the multimedia screen. You hit off, and it'll pop right back up, just a few seconds later. Whether you're closer, a little bit further away, whatever, it's just beeping in the drive-through all the time. Again, I've been in vehicles with pre-collision systems. Had a 2019 F-150 and a 2021 F-150 work truck as recent vehicles, and all of them had the pre-collision system, but none of them were just sitting there beeping at me while I was sitting here in a drive-through, because the wall's right there, like at a dead stop. And then for the buzzing noises, I'm actually probably don't even need to turn it up that loud, but I kept hearing this buzzing noise when I was driving down the road. And if you're driving through a quiet neighborhood, you're going about 20, 25, kind of in that neighborhood, you don't kind of got to stay out of the turbo. So you just don't want to be accelerating hard. But if you're just lightly accelerating, there's a buzzing noise. You can literally hear it. It's really loud when you're close to, houses and stuff like that. Any kind of objects coming over a bridge, whatever. It's a lot louder, but you're only really going to hear it with the windows down. So driving down the road, you can drive through a quiet neighborhood, and you can actually hear that noise refracting off the buildings coming back at you. and it's just like a constant buzzing noise as you're driving down the road. That was one of the first issues that I noticed, and it started at 250 miles, and I took it back to the dealership and was like, hey, this is the problem. The vent's whistling. They wrote it up, but pretty much told me that there's nothing they could do about it. The vent whistle, I probably should have said this sooner. What they told me with that was the cause there. They said it's got the double stacked squirrel cages, which is your blower, or your basically your blower, and they said they're double stacked, and one's actually pushing through the other one, causing this noise. And man, like I said, when you can adjust it to the floor and it's stopped, or you adjust it all the way to the low temperature so that your AC door is basically wide open, you're controlling there. That's indicative of that's not coming from your blower motors. So, and as far as these fuel system noises, I mean, like I said, I've owned gas engines, diesel engines, turbo engines. My dad helped me rebuild my first motor when I was 15. This is not normal. They try to sell it to you as normal. You go into the dealership and they're like, oh yeah, this is totally normal. It's normal for the Tacomas. I drove 4 of them. So I drove an SR5. The SR5 without the climate control package did not have the vent whistle that this one does. That the ones with the upgraded climate control package do. So I would avoid that at all costs. The other thing was the buzzing noise that I'm fixing to play. I literally heard it on every single vehicle. Every single vehicle I went and drove it. And I was in Oklahoma City because I live out here in Western Oklahoma. So I was in Oklahoma City test driving one of these, and I could hear the buzzing noise. Mechanic heard the buzzing noise, and they were like, oh yeah, that's just the way these are. But again, I could have went right down to the Ford dealership, got one, and they don't do that. So I kind of not really thrilled with these guys, especially the dealership. I mean, I'm at the point I've had to get a lawyer involved because, it's absolutely ridiculous that, a vehicle's making this much noise. You go back in there and you've had it for 4 days, and you say, hey, man, we got to do something different. I went in there, and finally I was just like, dude, I want my truck back. Give me my truck and I'll go on. And they said they had processed a loan on it, and so they couldn't give me my truck back. And that's why it's gone to a lawyer. So, and like I said, I filed a complaint with Toyota corporate as well. So let me back that up to right here. You'll hear it. It's just a light buzzing noise as you're going down the road. This is 25 mile an hour. Sorry, I know there's a lot of man, I wish that would go away. Come on. I know there's a lot of background noise in there, but I literally recorded this on an iPhone. So I didn't truthfully, if I had a better mic, better like a wireless mic kit with a wind cover and whatnot, you'd probably hear a lot of these noises a whole lot better than you actually do. You'd hear them more as I hear them out in the field. So that's kind of just some of the really bad stuff that's absolutely driving me nuts. The other things, these are kind of, like I said, the name of this video is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. We started with the ugly. We're going to move to the bad. And all these manufacturers are moving to these digital screens. But man, this is ridiculous how bright these are. And this is the brightness turned all the way up. I'll show a picture of it turned all the way down. But I mean, dude, it's so bright. Your eyes are going to be constantly, basically trying to adjust, seeing down the road. Like, I don't understand why companies have moved to this. It's limited on how you can turn it down, and a lot of companies have moved to that where you could turn your lights all the way off, the dash lights and all the control lights and everything. You turn all this all the way off. You can't do that with a lot of vehicles anymore, and I wish these manufacturers understood that, at least with your pickups and some of your SUVs. I would say there's probably thousands, if not tens of thousands of guys every night sleeping in one of these trucks. And it's generally out on location on a job somewhere. you know, sleeping in the cabs of these, and you're trying to sleep against all this crap. Like, I don't know. I've personally done it. I've worked there's several times where I've worked, basically 24 hours, and you had 20, 30 minutes to lay down, catch a cat nap in your truck, and then you got this kind of crap staring you in the face. Like, that's just insane. But that's kind of a personal preference. I will say the reason I ended up purchasing a Tacoma over a Ford was Ford's got that big screen in their Rangers now, and their heated seat buttons and whatnot are in there. I personally prefer having the physical button because you kind of have that muscle memory of being able to just reach over and hit it without actually having to take your eyes off the road and try to find it on the screen. You just reach over, hit it, because there's muscle memory there. With touchscreen, we saw the same thing with phones when we were texting years ago. So texting and driving back in 2004, 5, 6, if you didn't have a touchscreen, you could just grab the phone, send a message. You didn't have to take your eyes off the road, hit send, and go. Like, most of us never even looked at our phones. You'd look at it to read a message, but you didn't look at it to send it. But when they moved away from physical buttons, that changed, and there started being a lot more incidents because of it. But kind of seeing the same trend with the multimedia systems. I personally don't think it's good, but some people absolutely love them. I can deal with the multimedia systems if they would put a freaking display off button on them. Some of the, like the Ford Ranger with some of the lower end packages, like your basic XL package, they'll have a teeny tiny screen in there and it's got a display off button. Why they don't put a physical display off button in with all the rest of this is absolutely beyond me. You got to go to your settings, display off. Like, you're hunting that driving down the road versus just reaching over, pushing the button off to the screen. So, but I personally, I despise these screens right here. I mean, you might as well just have two computer screens in your face while you're driving down the road. There's a lot more light coming from these than there are from like your analog gauges. And it's because every one of these pixels in here is lit up to where your analog gauges had just a few things lit up. So you didn't have near as much light coming from basically your information centers. So anyway, this is the dash on high. And before I continue, you can see this little blue light down here. I don't know what in the world Toyota was thinking, but it's reflecting off your bag here around your gear shifter, reflecting off the gear shifter. It actually reflects off the plastic above the rear view mirror. A blue light like that, is obscenely bright, and it's right here in your peripheral vision. So as you're driving down the road at night, that thing's right here. So you're just seeing it out of the corner of your eye the whole time you're driving down the road. Now, I get you can take a piece of electrical tape, put over that, and be fine. But when you pay $50,000 for a truck and have to put a piece of electrical tape over it because the engineers were too dense to understand that a bright blue LED in your face is probably not a good thing to have in the middle of the night. I don't know. I guess I'm gonna be honest. I'm kind of at the point where I'm completely over this truck. I will never buy another Toyota ever again. Like this, this was a definitely a one and done. Unless they drastically improve, this is a one and done. So let's display. So here's at night, and I've actually turned the contrast down. You can turn the contrast down on the multimedia screen, and it helps significantly. But here, you've still got a lot of light coming from this thing because this whole screen's lit up versus just a few individual markers, So, again, coming out of a 2016 F-150, I didn't have near this much light hitting me in the face. That's crazy. And the blue light down here, you can see it reflecting off the gauges. I just don't know. I don't know what the engineers were thinking. Because most of your vehicles, at least most of your domestic vehicles, have been a orangish, reddish orange color all the way back to the 1940s. Like, there's a reason it was that color. And it was so you don't have this light blinding the crap out of you at night. But apparently this group of engineers at Toyota, it almost looks like they've got a new batch of engineers who kind of was like, oh, we'll take some things from the old ones, but we're going to change some of this stuff. And they have no idea why some of that old stuff was the way it was. It's great to have innovation, but change for the sake of change is not always a good change. You need to understand why it was like the way it was, and then make the change from there. If you can logically make a good change from there, then yeah, absolutely. But this is dumb. It's absolutely dumb. Yeah, that's the light you're staring at night. That's in your eyes. I mean, another little complaint about some of the annoyances on this truck. So traction control, shut it off. You get this little pop-up warning. You'd make the warning go away. Probably 15 to 30 seconds later, it pops back up again. Make it go away, and it'll do it over and over and over. I actually had to shut the traction control off because I was going down a sandy road. It's very sandy out here in places, and I did not need that. Your ABS slowing you down. Your ABS and your traction control slowing you down. So, but these little warnings constantly popping up. There's no need for that. You've literally got this right here is telling you, hey, your traction control's off. I don't know why they thought this was needed. Same thing here. Rear seatbelt buckle. So I got in my truck, pulled out of my driveway, went to the stop sign, made a turn, got all the way up to speed, and at this point I'm 4 or 5 blocks away, and this light is still on. There's no one in the back seat. There's nothing in the back seat, but you're telling me that this is unbuckled. Like, why? You don't need to tell me that this is unbuckled if there's no one in the back seat. It's just stupid. Again, it's it's one of them things where they put this in here because it's a safety thing that a lot of these vehicles have. There's a lot of vehicles that have weight sensors in them. The F-150 I had, if you had enough weight in there, then it would tell you that the rear seat was unbuckled. But this, like, hey, it's just unbuckled. And I get it. If it pops up, hey, when I first start the truck, that's fine. Whatever. We'll go on, But for it to still be on as I'm, when I start my trucks, I start them up and I actually let them idle all the way down to 750 RPMs. Every single time, doesn't matter if I remote start it, don't remote start it, whatever. I let them idle all the way down. And then I take off. And for it to still be on that long is just stupid. And this. So, I guess before we go on, we'll just talk about the remote start. So the remote start on the app, I went into a grocery store, was waiting on it, got my stuff, had my bags in my hand, was waiting on it to print out. So I print my receipt, pull my phone up, I go to the app, and I try to start the truck. Press and hold the button. It says it's sending the signal. Truck doesn't stop. Press and hold the unlock button as I'm walking out the door. Sends the signal. Press and hold the start button. I get all the way to the truck and it still has not started. Wait to see if it sent the signal, and it did not start. You physically get in it and start it. The app is atrocious. It's highly annoying. I've got a clip in here somewhere of. Oh, actually, I don't know if I have the clip or not. Every time I was getting in the vehicle, the multimedia system would connect, and only when you had the app installed, it was asking you if you wanted to allow Toyota to access your phone, basically, to have access through your phone. Every time I started the truck. Every single time. I've had the Ford Pass and had no issues with that. I heard there was a couple workarounds like, hey, shut all your Wi-Fi off and shut everything off, get in it, plug it in direct, set it all up, and then it should stop doing that. That didn't fix it. So anyway, I ended up, because it kept sending me notifications for everything all the time. It would send you notifications for, hey, the window's it says the window's open or whatever. Or, hey, you left the doors unlocked, Personally, I don't need those. I think it's a little unnecessary. I shut them off in the truck, but was still getting notifications for it. And the constant, do you want to allow this access thing? I just deleted the app. It's not worth having, in my opinion. They've got a lot of work to do to make that usable. Now, if you're working in an office building and you want to remote start your truck with an app, yeah, or your vehicle, I guess, then yeah, there's some necessity there, but I don't know. It's like I said, it doesn't work as good as the Ford app does, and the Ford app doesn't work that great either. So there's been a lot of complaints on it. Now, you can remote start these by pressing the lock button 3 times, and on the third time, you have to hold it. So you press and hold the third time. The issue with that is a lot of times it doesn't want to work. So you'll press it 3 times, press and hold it. You don't know if the truck started or not unless you're looking directly at it, because unlike the Ford and the GM key fobs, it doesn't have an indicator that it accepted the remote start or didn't accept it. Like on the Ford one, you press the lock button, then you press the actual remote start button twice. And if it accepted it and remotely started your truck, a green light would come on the key fob. If it didn't, a red light would come on. There's no indicator one way or the other with these trucks. There's been times where, hey, I didn't get it to start and I was almost to the vehicle, so I sat there and intentionally tried to start it. Pressed and held it 3 times and nothing. Still wouldn't start. And sometimes it starts right up. It's highly irregular. Irregular is not the word I'm looking for, but it's just not consistent. It's very inconsistent. The other problem I have, and all Toyotas do this, every time you press the lock button, you press the unlock button, it beeps at you. I wish there was a way to shut this off, because that is freaking annoying. I don't need my vehicle beeping at me just because I walked outside to grab something out of my truck. I unlocked it, now it beeped at me, grab my thing out of the truck, lock it, and it beeps at me again. I don't need that. That's silly. Maybe some people do. That's fine. I can see where in cars and stuff, if you're in a parking garage, I can see where that would be great. But me personally, I don't need it. It's annoying to me. And I know you're going to hear me make a lot of comparisons to the Ford. I had that F-150, that 2016 F-150 3.5 EcoBoost for the last 4 years. Bought it at 53,000 miles and sold it at 92. Took pretty good care of it. Didn't have any real issues out of it. But I'll be honest, as some of the things I'm going to say here, like that vehicle as an everyday vehicle was just a better vehicle. And the fact is, I paid $35,000 for it, and I paid $50,000 for this truck. So in a way, I spent an extra $15,000 to have a truck that's less convenient and is more annoying, essentially. So it's been a great time. Here, so the turbo pattern on these is really weird. So there's times where it doesn't want to necessarily get into the turbo and climb a hill. It just immediately wants to downshift, spool the turbo up, and then start going. When you could literally take it out of cruise control, hold it at this speed. So at 51, you could hold it at 51 and just slowly lean into the pedal as you're climbing the hill. It'll spool the boost up and climb the hill without ever downshifting. For what reason, I don't understand it, and it's wildly inconsistent. There's times where it does it, sometimes it doesn't. I've got 2 videos here. The hills are similar size, and I just don't, there's no real rhyme or reason to it. And it's another one of the complaints I've got, because this thing has a turbo. Use the freaking turbo. That's what it's there for. Just climb the hills without downshifting and spooling the engine up to 3,500 RPMs. There's no reason for that. There's no reason you should be downshifting when you've got V8 torque essentially with these motors. V8 naturally aspirated torque in a mid-sized truck. Like, there's no reason it's not climbing this hill. Yeah, and there it was. It downshifted, spooled the boost up, and then immediately right out of it. This one here, we got basically a similar sized hill. It's not as steep as a grade immediately, and I think that's probably what some of it is. But again, they having come from the Ford that, you know, hey, I made the same drive all the time, and you just set the freaking cruise and it'll spool the turbos up and down, just like this. Okay, so that's what, like 3.75 psi essentially. Use the boost. That's what it's there for. That's what this turbo is on this engine to do. Oh, this. What are we doing here? And this right here, I'm gonna get on the highway, and one of the things this thing does for whatever reason is when it shifts from 6th to 7th gear, whatever the boost was at in 6th gear, it immediately doubles it or spools it up much higher, and then it just pulls right back out of it. Essentially, what I've seen is they don't have, and like I said, I've got some mechanical knowledge. I've done a lot of work on my own vehicles, you know, whether it was rebuilding a motor, pulling transmission, replacing water pumps, etc. Having dealt with some diesels, you know, owned a few of them, and dealt with turbo engines, turbo gas engines, naturally aspirated, everything. It just seems like they don't have a good turbo pattern built for this engine. And I'm sure they'll probably try to tell you, oh, it's got some kind of learning thing, blah, 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 whatever. But there's no reason for this. Like, this is just, it doesn't make any sense. Because you're already going along, you're already, you know, accelerating at the rate you want. You're not changing your throttle position, and then suddenly we're just going to double our boost pressure. Silly. Right there. It does it every single time. Every single time from 6th to 7th gear. I don't know why, and it just, like I said, it just seems like there's some bad programming. Like it just doesn't have a good turbo pattern built in for this engine. There's a lot more this engine can do, and it's just they're not letting it do it. So this little removable speaker here, which I'm gonna be honest with you, it's one of them novelty items that everybody's gonna be like, yeah, that's cool. It's cool until this thing stops working because it's not getting connection, and then now you've got a dead space in your volume on your dash. So personally, like I said, I didn't necessarily care for this, but I I wanted the heated seats, and the only way I could get heated seats on one of these vehicles at this time, yeah, I didn't know that I could go to the dealership and have them just put heated seats in, you know, whatever package that I was getting. Didn't know that. That's on me. But the only packages that had the heated seats were the fully upgraded thing. And speaking of that, why they tied the multimedia package to the 8-way power seats and the heated seats, I guess because it's an electronics package, but still, I would rather have the 8-way power seats and the heated seats than I had the multimedia system. And if I had the option to not get the multimedia system with those other two things, I would have. That's exactly what I would have done. And part of that's because there's, and you see this with Jeeps, when you've got your sound system all on the front of your vehicle, like on your dash, basically, as you get going down the road, because there's so much noise coming off that windshield and the material of that glass, your sound is, you're gonna, you kind of get a weird sound coming off the glass, essentially. So I've done some audio systems as well, had several vehicles with audio systems in them, and so I kind of like mine a little bit more balanced. I generally will balance the. I will balance them out myself. So whatever they've got the balance set at, hey, I'll turn the volume up to, like, let's say, a 20. I'll go to your balance and fade, and I will actually fade it back until I've to the back of the vehicle until I've got the same amount of sound coming from the front and the back, because it sounds a lot more balanced. But but when it's on just the windshield on these kind of vehicles, when you've got all the sound system in the windshield, basically, like coming off the windshield, it gets almost a nasally, boxy sound to it. It just doesn't sound right, and and then you're having to turn the volume up significantly louder to overcome the noise off the windshield and the loss of sound right here. So, because you've got two different sounds fighting each other essentially. So it's kind of silly that vehicle manufacturers do this. Like I said, Jeeps have always been like that. So, and Jeeps are like that because the speakers, if you can't put them in the doors, because like on the Wranglers and stuff, because people are taking the doors off. But anyway, so what you're going to hear is there's a rattle here. This started about 500 miles in, 500 750 miles on the truck. I drove down a gravel road with washboards on it, and this plastic ring right here started rattling. So I will let that play. Okay, so on this, this is another little annoyance for me personally. The neutral shift. So every vehicle I've ever had before, you've had to press your little locking mechanism here to go into neutral, or you pulled the gear shifter in the column toward you and then up or down. You had to go up into neutral. So you always had to basically unlock it and then move it. But these are not that way. You can actually, it's just a light pressure and it'll bump right off in the neutral. Oh, did I miss it? Yeah. And I completely let off the accelerator there because I didn't want to just throw it in neutral and the engine's spooled up and then back into drive. But if you're someone who drives with your hand on your steering wheel and one on the gear shifter, this thing is really easy to bump in the neutral. Really, really easy to bump in the neutral. And that's personally how I drive 90% of the time, is I've got my left hand on the steering wheel and one on the gear shifter. And to be able to bump it in the neutral that easy is just nonsense. Me personally, I think you should have to hit this locking mechanism to lock in and go in the neutral. Same thing with the electronic shift. You go over for the electronic shift. If you're taking a light corner and you're holding, hey, you're holding the steering wheel and then you got the gear shifter in your other hand over here. Let me move over so the camera can see me. And you start leaning a little bit, boom, you just dropped in the electronic shift. And depending on the way the programming's set up, it's probably going to drop a gear. And I just personally, I don't need it doing that. A better way to do this is the way that Ford did it in the F-150, which they took the deal off the side here, and your trigger to unlock the gear shifter was on the front, and then right here you had a plus minus button to move it up and down. So you didn't actually have to put it into manual mode. You could just set it in whatever gear you wanted, or you could pull it back one more, go into manual mode, and then set it that way. It just was a whole lot better way of doing that. And again, these are things that I didn't think to check when I was driving down the road. When I was test driving it, I'm driving through Oklahoma City. I don't drive through there much anymore. And so I'm in a high traffic area at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm just trying to make sure the vehicle runs good. I'm not hearing any crazy noises. The buzzing noises, I didn't hear because it was 100 degrees outside. We had the AC on full blast. And they're trying to go over the radio and everything, so you don't hear the buzzing noises until, hey, I get home and I'm driving it through my quiet little neighborhood here, and I've got my window down, and then now all of a sudden I'm hearing all these crappy noises. but I don't like the way this shifts like that. Maybe for people doing some hardcore off road, maybe it's a good thing where you can just bump it into neutral and roll backwards, roll forwards, whatever you need to do. I personally would have been just fine with them leaving that on the trigger, and then like I said, they would have been much better off putting the Shiftronic stuff right here or even right down here instead of moving over. It just kind of unnecessary, but here we are. This tailgate rattle. Let me back that up just a hair. Of course, this thing doesn't want to work correctly. So for whatever reason, every time and a lot of these seem to have it, as several other reviewers have noted. It's only the driver's side. So there's one of the cables that holds the tailgate on when it lays down, that holds it into position, rattles every single time you shut the door. Just like that. Every single time. And the side doesn't do it. Don't know why. Why it's just the driver's side. Some people have shimmed it. But I'm looking at this as I bought a brand new truck with 500 miles on it. It had 0 miles on it, or 6 miles on it when I bought it. By the time I left the dealership. By the time I got to 500 miles, these are the noises it was making. You spend $50,000 on a vehicle and it's making these kind of noises. I mean, that's insane. And as far as like the dash rattle with the speaker, so the the 2016 F-150 I had been to Colorado 8 or 9 times, up and down the dirt roads here, up and down county roads up there. So the dash had a little bit of a rattle to it here and there. It wasn't bad, but it did have it. But I expect that out of a 8-year-old vehicle that's got 90,000 miles on it. I don't expect that from a brand new $50,000 vehicle. That's completely ignorant. And anybody who thinks, oh yeah, you should just accept that, like, sorry, you shouldn't. You should not be accepting low quality for that price. You shouldn't be doing it. This digital noise. I'm going to turn the sound up so we can all hear it. The frequency may be too high for a lot of people to hear. My ears can still hear it at this point in my life. But there is digital noise coming from the gauge cluster. I'm in park right now. The truck's off, and it's showing me trip average mileage. I was doing 45 miles an hour driving around, so that's why you're seeing a higher mileage. At 70, this thing gets about 21 and a half. So, whatever. But and the multimedia screen, there's a noise coming from it as well. It sounds like a fan in the multimedia screen. But this is the digital noise coming from this screen right here. And that's the multimedia screen. A couple other noted issues from, that's been reported about these vehicles is to check the front and rear differentials, make sure they're not leaking. This could have just been water. You'll see the thumbnail that I put up on this. I drove through a little bit of water. That could just be what this is. I have monitored it and I haven't seen any leaking, but just be warned that is a thing. While you're under the vehicle, especially if you're going to purchase one of these, make sure you check the spare tire size, because some of the spare tires, either they didn't put a spare tire in it, or they didn't have one that matched the same size tires as what's on the vehicle. They weren't the same height and stuff. In a 4x4, I'm sure most people know this. If you don't, here's a little piece of information. Your tire height absolutely matters, especially on your rear end. So even a 2-wheel drive with the rear end, you want the tire height to match on anything that's got a gearbox. So on a vehicle that doesn't If your spare doesn't match your normal size tires, and I've had a spare that didn't match my aftermarket tires that I bought. If you get a flat on the rear, you got to take the tire off the front, put it on the rear, and put your spare on the front. Like that's how that has to go. And at that point, you don't want to be using your 4x4 either, because you're likely going to tear something up. It kind of puts these gearboxes in a bind because they're spinning. Your tires are trying to spin at basically a slightly different speed. So, on the tires, some of these had Wild Peaks on them. The Falcon Wild Peak, the I think they were AT3 or AT4s. I didn't see what they were, but mine are the BF Goodwrench Trail Terrain. And I got to looking into these tires. These tires are 4-ply passenger tires. Why BF Goodwrench makes a trail tire that is a 4-ply tire is a little bit beyond me. Because if you're spending any amount of time off-road, on gravel road, whatever, you really don't want a 4-ply tire. You're probably going to end up with holes in it. Every vehicle I've ever owned that's had any kind of tire like that has always gotten holes in them driving down these gravel roads, the gravel and dirt roads. And so I've always gone to basically a 10-ply. I know some people have went to like load range C, but I would definitely get something higher than a 4-ply tire. Part of the reason I bought a mid-sized truck was there's places I can't get into in Colorado with an F-150. I also don't have a lot of people with me most of the time. And these tires, I can't trust that tire to get me in and out of there. There's no way I can trust that tire to get me in and out of there. It's likely to just pop. So it's pop, or a rock will poke a hole in the sidewall or something, or just poke a hole in it. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's kind of silly that they would use that kind of tire on an off-road vehicle. It says it's designed for off-road. Let's keep going. Transmission failures. I'm sure multiple people have seen this already, but there's been a lot of reported, not a lot that I've seen, but there have been reported transmission failures. With the transmission failures, last I heard, they were 4 months out on getting any. They don't have any on the ground here in the United States. So if your transmission goes out, you're SOL. The starters have started having a solenoid fail on them, and the starters are on back order as well. And starter goes out, you are SOL. So, just a great way to start with a new generation of truck. And me personally, this is a learning lesson. I will never buy a first gen of a new generation ever again. Normally, I do a lot of research and reviews, and go over reviews and stuff before I buy the truck. Like with the F-150 that I had, I knew what problems it would have and about the mileage that people were seeing them before I bought the truck. I didn't do that with this because I trusted the Toyota name, and this is what I get for trusting a brand's name when they've changed their management and leadership. And from what I'm seeing, it looks like they've just gone cheap. So another little issue is these bed caps right here. A lot of people are seeing these kind of bubble and fold up in high heat. It was 100 degrees down here the other day. You see it on my dash in one of my videos, in one of the clips I put on here. But these are kind of folding up just a little bit on the sides. So, and again, I'm like, you pay $50,000 for a truck. I don't expect that to be doing that early in its life. 4 or 5 years down the road, after it's had some wear on it, hey, I get it. Another thing that these have is they have that paint protection that covers up some of the dash and some of the grill and the hood. And it goes in here. At first, I was like, man, that's really nice. And then the more I got to think about it, I was like, that's going to cause a fade line on these vehicles long term, which is probably better than chipping the paint. But if for some reason something has to be repainted, it's going to make it really hard to paint match that, because now you're going to have 2 different colors there. You're just going to have to peel it off and paint match everything. So it's one of them. Sounds great, but it can cost you in the long run. Keep going. Okay, so at this point in the video, I'm going to start going over things that I actually like about these trucks. The little clip here that holds the seat belts in place on the rear seats. This is one of them little things that to me makes a huge difference. Keeps this thing from rattling around back here. But yeah, no, I really do like these clips. The F-150 I had before did not have these. I don't think any vehicle I've ever owned have ever had these. And it's nice to not have that just bouncing around when you're going, you're on a gravel road, dirt road, come over some washboards, whatever, and not have that bouncing around is super nice. Let's see if I had any other pictures. Okay, so I test drove both of these vehicles right here, and I personally like the way the Toyotas look a lot better than I do the Fords. Um, I think the GMC Canyons actually look the best, but after getting in one of the GMC Canyons, man, I was looking at the dash and everything, and it just had cheap material on the dash. There's cheap faux leather and all this stuff, and I was just like, man, this thing's you're gonna take it down a few gravel roads, and it's just gonna start rattling. Everything in there will start rattling. And I've actually heard on some of the canyons where the digital gauge clusters started cutting in and out. I imagine it's a matter of time before that starts happening on all these vehicles that have digital gauge clusters. But anyway, wanted to talk about that because I absolutely love the way these things look. I think they look great. I bought the silver one, and truthfully, I wish I'd have spent a little more time looking at the gray that they have, and it's called bronze oxide, and it's almost this color back here, but it's a different color than this, but it's somewhat like that. And after I bought this, the more I looked at that bronze oxide, the more I was like, man, that's the color I should have bought. It, kind of if I was doing it over again and I was just dead set on buying another Toyota Tacoma, that bronze oxide would have been the color I bought. It gives you a lot of options to go with, like bronze colored wheels or black colored wheels. Both look fantastic on it. The silver looks good. I like the silver because silver's a lot easier to keep clean than some other colors like white. White will stain out here because we got a lot of red dirt, as you can see over here. It'll stain real bad, so I don't buy a lot of white vehicles anymore. Don't buy black vehicles anymore either. Had two of them, won't do it again. But that bronze oxide, man, I've really kind of fallen in love with that color. And like I said, I think these things look fantastic. Go to the next picture here. Oh crap. Anyway, I was trying to cover up whose dealership I was at and where I was at. One of the things I did notice, and I didn't actually measure like where the frame sits, but you can see the new Ford Ranger actually does sit a little bit higher. There's a little bit more clearance in the top of the fender well, back of the fender well. Bed's a little higher, but the bottom of it, you've actually got some extra ground clearance here. One of the other, and I'm kind of going over some of the good things. One of the other negatives that I have right now, though, is these side steps. I personally don't like them. They're just kind of clumsy for getting in and out. I could see where they would be good if the truck was lifted higher, but I mean, right now you're having to actually I'm stepping over the step to get out of the vehicle instead of stepping on it, and then stepping in it, it's like you're almost too high, and then you have to like sit down into the vehicle. So it's just kind of weird. But yeah, I did drive like I said, did drive the Ford Ranger, and I already talked about how the thing that really pushed me to the Tacoma was the physical buttons on the dash, and these Ford Rangers, when you shut the door on these, there's a light ping. It's almost like you thump a pop can or something, man. And the F-150s, I didn't really notice any of them doing them. I had a 16 and a 19 and a 2021. The 19 and 2021 were work truck packages because they were one work trucks. Didn't really notice that most of the time. There were sometimes you'd shut it and it might do it, but most of the time it didn't. These Rangers do it every single time you shut the door. It's this weird pinging noise. I will say the seats in these Ford Rangers, once you get to the XLT and like the FX package, the seats are a little bit more plush than the Tacoma. But the Tacoma, in my opinion, the seats kind of hug you a little bit better. Now I've heard some people complain about, just doing a quick side by side here about the cab, the way the cab feels on the interior and the driver's seat of the Tacoma, especially like for bigger guys. They're like, hey, I feel like I'm in, kind of a small box or whatever. But at me, I'm at 5'8". I'm just under 5'8". I get in there, and for me, I feel like I'm in the cockpit of like a jet fighter kind of thing for the Tacoma. Man, I do love the way the interior feels. It looked like it was built a little bit more sturdy interior wise to me, but and and like I said, the seats weren't as plush, but they were a little bit more like grab you. Kind of just felt like you were in a very high quality vehicle. Um, and if I take all the noises away, all the annoyances away, the remote start is probably a big one for me because I use my remote start. I use it all the freaking time, and to not have it just work when I want it to work, it makes me want to grab that key fob and just chunk it because it's stupid. Um, but beyond that, if you take all that stuff away, all the noises away, all the whatever away, the Tacoma to me is just fun to drive. There's days I'll get in it and I'll set the AC up in the way that I don't have to listen to the wind blow or the whistle coming from it, and I might turn on a little bit of music or turn on an audiobook and just go cruise down a back road 45 50 mile an hour. And it's just fun to drive. On that same note, the suspension, you drive over cracks like this, you're going to feel them. You're absolutely going to feel them. This has the Bilstein suspension. You're absolutely going to feel those cracks. You're going to feel every crack, bump in the road. You feel every little rock and pebble, essentially. These tires are at 30 psi, so that's not really, I had somebody who was like, oh, maybe your tires are pressured up too high. No, they're not. I came off, that F-150 that I had 20-inch rims with 33-inch tires at 40 psi. No, it's not the tires. It's the suspension's it's really stiff. It's very sporty. I personally like that. And what I like about it is there's an S curve outside of town here. I can set the cruise 45, 50 miles an hour and just whip right through that curve. Not a lot of body roll. It just feels stuck to the ground. It's planted on the ground. The tires actually feel like a weak point on that for me. If you're wanting to like really go out and drive it hard, you kind of come through that S turn. I think you could probably make it 60, 65 if you had a little bit better tire and not have a lot of tire squealing and everything. But the way these tires are, they're just so soft, man. They just want to. I wouldn't trust them. So, but like I said, all you take away all the bad things, and it's fun to drive. It's fun to drive. I like the seats, the interior. Like I said, I thought was I'm not a huge crazy fan of the design of like the vent design that they put in it. Would have much preferred like the 2023 Tacoma design. That's just me personally. But overall, I do like the interior of it. I wish they didn't have the digital gauges, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And with all the noises, like I said, and some of them that I played early on, I've sent in a complaint to corporate because the dealership basically wouldn't help me. And they were like, well, we can get you a rental vehicle maybe at some point, and because we don't have one right now. And I was like, so you don't know when you're going to get parts, you don't know when you're going to be able to get a rental, you don't know if you're going to be able to fix these noises, but you won't give me my truck back. Like, absolutely ridiculous. So downside is I will never, like I said, I won't buy another Tacoma or Toyota unless they do some serious changes. At least I say Toyota of these new models. So the first generation of the Tundra, this new generation of the Tundra, the Sequoia, the 4Runner that's coming out, the Tacoma. They've had a couple of their cars catch on fire. The Sequoia and those were the Corollas that caught on fire. The Sequoia and the Tundra have had issues with the motors. And one guy here in town had a Tundra, and sitting in his garage, it was filling up with dust. So it basically something in the truck wasn't sealed right. They've just gone cheap on their manufacturing, is what they've done. I hate to say that, but they're trying to be cheap like the GM and Ford, but you're not getting the same quality as you would from a Ford. You're not getting the same convenience as you would from a Ford right now. And these Rangers have their own set of issues. So like the tires here, these tires are junk. They look good, but they're junk. Turbo pattern though, Ford's been doing turbo pattern in trucks for a very long time, so it wants to work the turbo a lot more than just shifting gears. And so to me, that's a lot better. That's how the diesels were. They often leaned into the turbo instead of just downshifting, going into another gear. But like I said, overall, I still think the Tacoma here. I think they're one of the best looking trucks out there from the midsize range. There's a lot of good things here. The seats and whatnot. The way the suspension feels for me personally, I think it feels great. It, like I said, if it wasn't for a lot of the annoyances, it's fun to drive. It's really fun to drive, but there's a lot of inconvenience and headache that you're getting along with that. And for $50,000, I don't feel like you should have got that level of inconvenience. Especially coming from a 2016 that I didn't have those problems. I didn't have the noises. I didn't have the issue with the remote start and whatnot. I didn't have all these extracurricular issues. And I've driven some of the new ones. Like I said, I've driven a 2021 F-150. They've got their own set of issues. But I would still take one of them over one of these if I was buying it. If I was doing this again, I wouldn't even, knowing what I know now, I would not buy one of these Tacomas. And for that reason, and kind of all the things going on here, I can't recommend them. Also, this has the camera. This is another thing I forgot. The camera beeps all the freaking time. There's a setting to turn the beeping noise off, but it doesn't always stop beeping. You can hit a bump or a dip in the road, and it's going to beep at you. It was beeping and then flashing up a little warning on the dash, but it was flashing in an instant second that I couldn't see what it was. So I didn't know what I was getting an alert and a warning for. They really need to fix their app. That thing's atrociously bad. And not being able to have the remote start work on your key fob, though, is just stupid. Absolutely stupid, especially at this price point. If you're paying $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, I can somewhat understand that, but I could go get a 21, 22 Ford Ranger and not have them problems at that price point, at that lower price point. So I wouldn't have the noises coming from the fuel system, none of it. So my verdict is to stay away from these Tacomas. I would stay away from Toyota in general right now. Just the Tundra's not doing it. The Sequoias, the 4Runners, like once they come out, or if they've already came out, we're seeing so many issues out of these others. The Corolla, and Toyota's doing everything they can to find a reason to not hold up warranty. So, and it's just like I got told with the fuel pump thing. They're like, oh, we can replace it, but it might be louder. And then they're like, oh, well, it's like that on the Fords and the Chevys too. And I drove this Ford right here. It does not make that noise. I don't hear it when I'm driving down the road with the windows down. I specifically went and drove this one around for that reason. And I did not hear any of those noises. So it just silliness, and they're, and like I said, I think they've built an okay product here. It has potential to be phenomenal. But they, with all the stuff that they swung and missed on, man, they struck out multiple times. You're basically changing innings at this point. They struck out so much. So, and it's unfortunate because there's some home runs with this truck. But anyway, that's all I've got for this video. Appreciate everybody who watched it and listened to me complain about this truck. And it's unfortunate, like I said, because I think I'm more disappointed than I would be angry about this situation, because the truck looks good. It's got a lot of good things about it, but it's just they failed in a lot of ways. And then when I tried to take it back, the fact that I took it back on day 4 with 500 miles on the odometer, and 350 of those 500 miles were to that dealership. Were from that dealership to that dealership. And they would not take the truck back. And at a $50,000 price point, if it's making that kind of noises, if I'm running the dealership, I understand. You got to have some level of understanding that, hey, customer's not happy with it. It's making noises. I can hear the noises. We can all hear the noises. I wouldn't want if I was married, I wouldn't want my wife coming home in a vehicle that sounded like that. That would be an issue, or, I helped my ex-wife's daughter get a car. And if she came home in that vehicle that sounded like that, there's no way. We'd have been going right back up there and being like, hey, what, there's a problem. Because it sounds like it has problems. But the noise, especially the fuel rail noise, that's apparently been a noted thing from a lot of the reviewers. But hearing it come out the sides of the vehicle as you're driving through quiet neighborhoods with the windows down, that's unacceptable. Like, I haven't heard any other vehicle do that except for 2 days ago. I heard a 24 Volkswagen SUV do it, and it makes me wonder if it's just the manufacturer. They change manufacturers or change pump design or something, but it sounds like it's in that pump and it's in that fuel rail. There's no insulation on it. There's no noise canceling anything. Like, I don't know. It's silly because, like I said, I can start this truck up right here, go drive it, and I don't have those noises. But anyway, this is my take on a Toyota Tacoma, because, like I said, there's lots of good things, and there's the goods just unfortunately don't outweigh the bad. I would avoid Toyota pretty much at all costs right now. And just as a heads up, most people probably know this, I took a chance with Toyota. The closest dealership to me is 70 miles away. The dealership I bought this at 75 miles away. If you have any issues and you need to get a rental, you got to drive at 75 miles up there to go get a rental, and that's, like I said, I took Toyota on their name because Toyota's been, for years prior, have made a lot of really good vehicles that went 200,000-300,000 miles. My dad's got one that I purchased him a Toyota Camry that's got 200,000, almost 200,000 on it. And it's, burns a little oil, or it did for a little while. Now it stopped, but for the price we paid for it, it wasn't bad. And I was like, man, if it'll keep running that long, shoot, can't really complain about it. And Toyota's kind of always had that reputation, but it seems like the last 2 to 3 years, they're doing everything they can to just take that reputation and throw it out the window. Just light it on fire and burn it. Because these are low quality production vehicles at this point at a very high price point. Matter of fact, this truck right here is a $44,000 truck, and this one's a $50,000 truck. And they're equally, this one has heated seats and everything, just like this one does. This one has a slightly better suspension. So you're paying almost $6,000 more in the same price range. You're getting less mileage, less convenience, which is crazy that they took things that were already convenient and made them less convenient. It's just not good. Anyway, that's my take. Appreciate everybody watching. I hope you all have a good day. Thank you.